You've been appointed a data protection officer, and now what do you do? You are the head of our privacy. Sometimes they are also saying you are our chief privacy officers and you manage it. You have a question. What do I do? You've been appointed a data protection officer, and now what do you do? Well, that's a common question. In many small or mid sized organizations, the head of IT, the head of security, or sometimes the head of legal or any other department is asked. From now on, you are our data protection officer, you manage. Or, in simple terms, you are the head of our privacy. Sometimes they are also saying you are our chief privacy officers and you manage it. You have a question. What do I do? How do I manage? What are my responsibilities? And what do I have to do? Because you have a day job. And this is on top. This is the extra thing. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. Because this, I've been asked many a times. Many a client of mine come in saying, I'm head of security. I've been assigned privacy responsibility. Now what do I do? And so on. So the first question to handle is to understand is, if you are made a data protection officer or a privacy responsible, you have the obligation and you are responsible to make privacy happen. But what does a data protection officer mean? Before I get into what you can do and how I usually would approach the situation and what I would do in your place, first let's understand, what does a data protection officer do? Well, in my view, data protection officer or a privacy responsible has five tasks. The first one being advise, that is, guide the company, advise the company on what do the privacy laws says, what do they mean, and how do they apply in the context of the company. So if you are a healthcare company, what does it mean for your clinical trials? What does it mean for the patient data or the data your devices are collecting? If you are a manufacturing company, what data you are collecting? Maybe you are collecting loyalty cards, maybe you are collecting data through smart devices. So your responsibility is to advise the company, advise the organization on what obligations they have and how does it need to be applied. That's advice. The second thing you would need to do as a DPO is monitor. Now, monitor means there are these privacy obligations, there are these requirements which your company needs to comply, but are they being complied with? What are the gaps? Where are the gaps? And what is being done on these gaps to mitigate, to address, to reduce these gaps? So that's also your responsibility. That is to monitor compliance with the privacy obligation. And remember that privacy obligations keep changing, keep on adding up, because there are privacy laws today and there will be new privacy laws and also changes in those privacy laws. So you monitor. The third thing you need to do is you need to support the organization. While you advise them, you support them, you guide them on how to do it. For example, they are planning to launch a new product or they want to go to EU. So it's your responsibility to support them in these steps. They are launching a new product and it processes personal data significant way. You would need to conduct a data protection impact assessment, the DPI. They want to launch in the EU, you would need to conduct a gap assessment and see what actions are to be taken. So you work with them, you support them to do these things. That's the third thing. The fourth thing is you train the staff, because they are not privacy professionals. Privacy is not their responsibility. Of course, business is the end responsible, business is the accountable party. Each and every person in the organization is responsible for privacy compliance, but you have been assigned that responsibility, so it's your job to train the staff. Now when I say train, the difference is you don't have to train yourself. You can even hire an external company like Fit4Privacy or any other firm, and they train it, or you can get the online trainings from a website and then make sure the staff is trained. The objective here is the company staff and management understand what is privacy, what are the implications, and what are they supposed to do. So once you train them, and one thing when you train them is don't train them on the law. That's complicated for them. You have to train them on their job. If they are in marketing, you need to tell them in marketing what does privacy imply. When you are sending a campaign, you need to make sure consent is there. You need to make sure in the emails people can unsubscribe, so things like that. So make it practical. That's why I say, and wherever I work with clients, I always ensure that we deliver job specific scenario based training. What does it mean? Job specific meaning relevant to that job, and scenario based meaning scenarios relevant to the job, scenarios relevant to the marketing officer or a procurement officer. That's how it needs to be customized. They do not like the generic privacy training. Another thing you need to do, the fifth thing you need to do is you need to respond. Now, how do you respond? Or who do you respond to? Well, there are customers who are asking individual rights requests, privacy rights requests. There are authorities who will be asking at times wanting to conduct an audit, having a query or having concerns. And even management asking, we are going to EU, are we compliant with the EU GDPR? We are going to the UK, are we compliant with the UK GDPR and all that? So you need to be able to respond to those queries. So the DPO is quite a heavy role. So if you've been assigned this responsibility on top of your day-to-day job, it is too much. Well, when someone approaches me, I usually tell them that start from the top. How do you approach? Like last week, one of my friends called me and says, "Hey Punit, I've been made privacy responsible in my organization." I said, "Congratulations, but what do you do now?" He said, "I have no clue." So that's what I'm going to tell you now. What do you do? Because all that, what a DPO must do is easy to say, but how do you do it? Well, in my opinion, you have two choices. One is do it yourself, and second is do it with someone else. If you want to do it yourself, I give you three steps. One is you define a data protection policy that is agnostic of any law, but covering most of the regions, most of the markets where your company is operating. So you create a privacy policy which covers different requirements and in an agnostic way writes defines those requirements. Shorter the better, so don't go too long because nobody would read it. Try to aim for around 10 to 20 pages and summarize those requirements. So create a data protection policy. Second stage, once you have created that, what do you do is you go in to an assessment against this policy. Are these requirements being complied with? If they are, that's good. If they are not, make a note, plan the actions, and start executing those actions. So a gap assessment would be the second phase, and it will of course lead into many gaps which will need to be managed as projects. And that's the third step then, the management of the privacy project and continuing to advise in privacy operations. That is, take the gaps, start following up on their closure, and on the side set up processes and monitor those processes to perform in line with the expectations stated in the policy. So that's what if you do it yourself. The easier option would be that you get some partnership with a collaborator like us. Like when I work with, I usually start with a discovery day. If the tone starts from the top, how do you start? Well, I do a discovery day. I ask the DPO, so say you are assigned the role of the DPO. I say, hey, man, let's do one thing. Let's get the top five people in your organization into a room. Yes, the CEO, the CFO, the COO, the CHRO, and the CIO, maybe, or whatever the top five people in your organization. Get them in 1.5 to 2 hours to understand privacy and the obligations. So, about different privacy requirements, like you usually know in the compliance checklist that we have, I talk about the 12 privacy requirements. So, I go deep into that. Then I talk about the privacy principles. That is, you've seen my video on the privacy principles. So the GDPR privacy principles is what I rely on. Then I explain them the privacy obligations and give them a checklist. So essentially, in an hour and a half to 2 hours, we create privacy awareness. So it's a discovery. They get to understand, they get to feel what privacy is, what needs to be done, and where does it apply. And that's very important if you are assigned the responsibility of being a privacy responsible or DPO, because then they know what this privacy animal is all about, what complexities, what do they have to do. Because otherwise, they put the responsibility on you and they think it's done. Well, no, it starts. Now, you're the one going to tell them what to do. And that's where it helps you. So, 1.5 to 2 hours, we do a privacy awareness session with top management of the company. Then, in the next few hours, about again 1.5 to 2 hours, we go through different actions that they must take. I usually have a list of around 50 to 60 actions, some organizational, some department specific, and we discuss, we brainstorm, we go through each one and saying, do you have a privacy notice? Of course we do have. Does it contain the information about rights? How can people exercise their rights? Does it contain California specific addendums? These are the kind of questions. Do you have cookies on your website? Well, yes. Are they segregated? Do people get the notice when they come in? Do people have the option to opt out? So these are the kind of questions I ask, very specific, very practical. Do you have a data inventory? So then we go through these actions. Usually there are three types of answers. Yes, we are doing it. Then I ask follow-up questions. No, we are not doing it. Then we note down as a gap. And the typical scenario is we are doing something, but we need to do something more. So that's what we do. It can also be called a quick dipstick gap assessment. Of course, you can do a full blown gap assessment for 2 months, but what's the point of accentuating the pain when you know that things are not so good and a lot of actions are needed? So, step one, I help create awareness. Step two, then you go through the action. Step three, then you let go of the executives because they have been trained or they've been made aware of privacy obligation. They have also given input on what actions are needed. Then in the second part of the day, I work with the assigned DPO. That is, let's say you are assigned as the DPO. I work with you to prioritize those actions, and then I go back for a couple of days or some days, and based on that prioritization you have done, we work together a plan for you, what needs to be done, what is more priority, what is, and there we put emphasis on what will a customer ask, what will a regulator ask, and rest all is internal kitchen. So we focus on polishing the customer side and the regulator side, and of course you need to fix in the internal kitchen as well, but you start from the outside and bring things inside. So that's what we do in the discovery day. That is, start with awareness, provide some information on actions, go through those actions, and then prioritize. And what this powerful discovery day does is that in one day, top 5 or 7 of your top managers are aware of privacy obligations, and they know privacy as much as, or more than, or at least as much as you do. You have also learned privacy. Second, you have gone through the key actions or obligations, and they will now support you in doing those actions. And third, the second part, which we will work together, we will build together a plan or set of prioritized actions. And usually you put priority one, priority two, priority three actions, which allow you and your organization to quickly get into action. Because typically the priority one actions would be around organizational setup, having a policy, having a privacy notice, having a cookie notice, and so on. Step two or priority two actions would be around having a data inventory, having templates for data protection impact assessment, and so on. And phase three activities would be more around consolidation and having some processes for responding to different things. And then in a systematic manner, what was the question at the start? I've been assigned a DPO. What do I do? You have, with help from a professional organization like ours, done a discovery day and set things in motion. You have the obligation to do 5 things, as I said at the start. 5 things is advise your management and staff, monitor compliance, support your team, and train them and respond to queries. If you do all that, that can be complicated. But how do you do? Either you set up a policy, do the gaps, and kick off the project, or you call me and we do a privacy discovery day at your organization. And of course, there is other way. You read, you follow, and then you make your own plan. And that's also perfectly valid. That's all I wanted to share with you in this brief. For those of you who know me, thank you so much. And those who don't, well, my name is Punit Bhatia. I'm the privacy advisor at FIT4PRIVACY.com or Fit for Privacy Company. And in this podcast, it was my pleasure to share this with you. Do visit our website. If you like this video, please do click like, do comment, do subscribe, read our blog, watch our videos, we listen to our podcast, and more importantly, stay in touch. Thank you so much and stay blessed.
Hello, and welcome to the Fit for Privacy Podcast with Punit Bhatia. This is the podcast for those who care about their privacy. Here, your host, Punit Bhatia, has conversations with industry leaders about their perspectives, ideas, and opinions relating to privacy, data protection, and related matters. Be aware that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are not legal advice. Let us get started.